attacked the Armenian population. Victims were thrown off balconies, raped, burned alive. Following mass migrations, Armenia and Azerbaijan were emptied of each other's populations. Refugees flooded the capitals. Escalating the guerrilla war, Azerbaijan launched a full invasion of Karabakh. At first, Azeri forces pushed the Armenians back. But by 1993, the Armenians of Karabakh were more organized, had better weapons, and drove the Azeris back. The corridor to Armenia was reopened. Azerbaijan persisted, conscripting more troops and hiring foreign mercenaries. Rallying its forces, Azerbaijan launched another offensive. This, too, was unsuccessful. By 1994, tens of thousands had been killed, and millions more were refugees. The Azeri government was blistering at the humiliation of its defeat by the 170,000 Armenians of Karabakh. Armenian forces had pushed into Azerbaijan itself in order to create a buffer zone. As the battles raged on, one region to the north was in a stalemate. Armenian fighters manning remote mountain outposts faced a superior Azeri garrison in the valley below. This was the Gulistan front. The village of Maghavuz was headquarters to the units stationed along the Gulistan front. It also served as an artillery support to the Armenian forces further south. The slightest rain would turn its unpaved roads into streams of mud. The battle at nearby Mir Bashir was endemic of the shifting fortunes of war. The Armenians of Karabakh were now taking the conflict into Azerbaijan in a gambit to secure defensive positions surrounded by a buffer zone.
In February of 1988, there were some selected pogroms or massacres against Armenians that were living in Sumgait. There were additional pogroms against Armenians in Baku, the capital city of Azerbaijan. Out of this population of maybe about 400,000 Armenians who for a long time had been residing in Azerbaijan, about 350,000 fled.
Armenia got involved in this conflict because it wanted to prevent the genocidal deportation and destruction of the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. That was a danger they saw, and Armenia simply couldn't sit by with folded hands and allow that to happen.
The thrust into Mir Bashir was producing heavy casualties on the Armenian side. Hospitals in this region were already stretched to the limit. The wounded would have to be flown back to Stepanakert, Karabakh's capital, where they could receive the best care. Incoming supplies would be stored at headquarters and distributed to the units that needed them the most. Medicine was always scarce. Emergency operations would often be performed without anesthetic. Maghavuz in '94 was a village of empty houses. Just a year before, in 1993, it had been contested ground between Azeri and Armenian forces. Among the fighters on the Armenian side were the White Bears, a group of fighters organized and equipped by Garo Kakejian, a volunteer from the United States. Kakejian was the grandson of genocide survivors. His unit drew volunteers from all over, taking on the most difficult missions. Garo had fallen here, on one of the hilltops overlooking Maravuz. The depiction of the coming skirmish left out one detail: the mercenary snipers that would be tracking his final movements.
Part of the reason that the Russians supplied armaments, but also then troops for maintaining borders, was because they had a self-interest in utilizing Armenians as a buffer nation.
Well, Russia, of course, does want peace in the region, but on its own terms. Russia wants a peace that serves Russian national interests. Oil of the Caspian needs to be exported some way. It can't be flown out. It's got to be pumped out through pipelines. And here the U.S. Would like to see a peace which would result in Azerbaijani oil being pumped out to the west through Turkey to a port called Ceyhan, which is on the Mediterranean Sea. The best way to pump out that oil would be through Armenia. Russia, of course, would prefer to see the pipeline go through Russia, through the area of Chechnya, so that Russia would then be able to get the transit revenues and also to promote its dominance, to maintain its dominance in the region, because the country through which the oil flows would have the option of turning off the spigot. The ability to turn off the spigot gives you enormous power.
Գնանք մեր տղաների մոտ, դիրքերը մեր, աչակիների մոտ։
Ուր են։
Աչակիները հիմա յոկ թափայում են, որ կոչվում է կանաչ սար, Գյուլիստանի վերևն է։ Այստեղից 15 կիլոմետր բարձրանալու ենք սարերը։ Այն կողմի սարերը։
Gulistan sits in the valley below Marav, the tallest peak of Nagorno-Karabakh. In 1994, the Armenian side had three main camps directly opposing Gulistan.